So I got some errands to run here, so figured I might as well do it on the bike. And I'm actually on my wife's bike. She has a 2021 Harley Davidson Sport Glide, and I figured why not do a little bit of a review while I'm out riding around and getting some work done. So this bike, they only made it for a couple of years here in the States. They only made it available from 2018 until 2021. So this was the last year for the Sport Glide here in the United States. However, you could still purchase them right up until 2024 in the overseas market. So some of the reasons for that, I guess, is because of a lot of guys want, they were talking about, well, put the bigger motor in and forward control, and instead of forward controls, do the mid controls, and then raise it and make it a little bit of a sportier bike. I'll wait on this trash truck here. But make it a little bit of a sportier feel, which is fine. It's what guys wanted, or a lot of people wanted. So that's what Harley did. So they took the same bags, they took the clamshell style side bags, and they put it in a bigger fairing and put it on the, came out with the Lowrider ST, which is a great bike. But it's a very different feel than what you have with this bike. My wife loves this thing, and to be honest with you, so do I. I enjoy riding it. Now we did do a few things to it, and I'll go over a couple of things that we did. One of the first things we did was the bars. We brought the bars a little bit higher because I noticed when my wife was riding and I was, beside her or behind her, her shoulders were rolled forward, and I said, you got to get your shoulders a little more relaxed and get them back a little bit more. You seem to be leaning forward a little too much and rolling your arms forward. So I put risers on, 6-inch risers, and much better. Next thing we did as far as riding comfort went with floorboards, Kurdiakan floorboards. We put the mini floorboards up front, and they were adjustable. They're adjustable, five-way adjustable, however you want to say it. There's 5 adjustments on them, and you can roll them up, back, kind of however you want them. That made a big difference. The stock pegs, when I got on this thing, I tend to be a little more of an aggressive rider, and we got into turns. I got into turns with this thing. The very first time I was on it, within the first 100 miles, I was scraping the pegs. I'm like, whoa. So now with these floorboards, I don't scrape as quickly. I still do because of the way I ride, but I don't, my wife doesn't scrape them because you can't adjust them so that they don't scrape quite as quickly if you want. It has the 107, the Milwaukee 8107. It has plenty of power. You can juice them up. I mean, all of you that know anything about these motors, it doesn't take much to really get them to go crazy if you want to. But we pretty much left the motor stock except for the exhaust. I put a Cobra exhaust on. It's just a slip-on. The head pipe's still the same. Haven't done much there. It's got plenty of power for my wife. If it were me riding it primarily, I'd most likely, put a set of cams and different intake and tune and all that kind of stuff. But you don't have to. I mean, the speedometer goes to 130, and yeah, it will do that. So that's all I'll say about that. The other thing we did for comfort, and especially we just did this because my wife decided to start riding a little longer rides. She went up to Maine with me, and there's some videos out there. We climbed Mount Washington and stuff. She did great on that ride. But one of the things that these bikes have a real small windshield, and where they come with a real small screen. The fairing doesn't do a whole lot. It's just enough to keep some of it off your chest, the wind off your chest, and make it a little more pleasant for longer rides. but we decided to go with a taller windshield, taller windscreen. So we went with a 12-inch. We do have an 8-inch also, but the problem with the 8-inch is that it would still catch if she would wear a half-shell helmet. Her full-face helmet, it wasn't a big deal, but her half-shell helmet, the wind would catch right underneath her helmet and put a little bit of pressure on there. So with the 12-inch, it kicks everything right up over your head, and it's actually very comfortable. She has no problem doing 400-mile days. Stock seat, stock suspension. The soft tail suspension, they did a much better job with. It's much better than a number of years ago. I do know guys will still change this suspension. And hey, check this out. Another sport glide right beside me. You don't see too many of those. And here's another one, I guess. We don't see these two very often. So, kind of surprising to have one pull up beside me. But as far as the bike itself, the bike weighs around 700 pounds. It's a cruiser style, like I said earlier. The brakes has no problem getting up to speed. Slowing down isn't a big deal either. Now, it does have the single disc up front on the front wheel, and some people had complaints about that. You know, why didn't they put the double? Well, one of the reasons they didn't do that, why didn't you put the dual disc brakes on? Well, one of the reasons was they're trying to keep the weight down a little bit, and you know, that adds a few pounds. It also makes a little bit of a difference with the maintenance. I mean, one set of brake pads up front instead of two. Not a big deal. However, as far as being able to stop, I have no issues with it. I mean, I don't know. Learn how to ride, I guess. I don't know what I don't know how else to put it. I mean, I don't have any issues with getting this bike stopped. None whatsoever. But I also, I'll use the front brake and light to lighter on the rear brake because the majority of your braking is up front, and I get that. But I don't have any issues with this bike in terms of the stopping. But some people have complained about it, so I don't know. That's just my opinion here on this. The story about how this bike came about is interesting. My wife had been looking at a soft tail slim. She told me she wants to start riding her own instead of just riding with me all the time. So, excellent. I was 100% supportive of it, but I said, you gotta get your permit and your license and all that. Let's get all this stuff straightened out. And so we had been looking at a soft tail slim, and we were I was in California moving my son home from, let me start over here. I'm getting kind of jumbled up here. Bike Week, Ocean City Bike Week. We had planned on going down there in 2021. My wife and I were both going. Well, our son was in Camp Pendleton at the time, and we knew he was coming up to the end of his active duty, and we were going to be moving him home. And I had planned on going out and moving him back. Well, the Marines, they kept pushing things around and pushing things off, and turns out he was coming home the same week of Bike Week. So I said, well, I'm going to be in California bringing him home. My wife and a bunch of friends, they went down to Ocean City Bike Week. My son and I, he was driving his car and I was driving the van with all his stuff in it and all that stuff, and we're moving him home. We had left the Grand Canyon early, I guess it would have been on Wednesday morning, and we drove most of the night. I mean, we did. We drove up until about around 4 a.m. We finally said, okay, we're tired, we're going to pull over. We ended up close to Durango, Colorado. We're tired, we're going to pull over, we're going to get some rest. Well, around 9 o'clock, my phone rings. So till I got to sleep was around 5 a.m. Around 9 a.m., my phone rings, and I'm like, what in the world? It's my wife. And she said, hey, I found the bike I like. So you got to be kidding me. So anyway, we started talking. I talked to the salesman for a little bit, and I said, man, I mean, I guess if this is the one you want, you know, whatever, get it. And I didn't know anything about the sport glides because I'd been researching the Softail Slims for her, and I'd ridden a couple of them. I was like, man, they're great. They're a great bike. Be a great bike for her. And at any rate, one of my friends took this one for a test ride, and he said, hey, handle's nice. I think she'd be fine on it. So that's what happened. She was like, I love this thing. So she bought it. So I'm in Colorado when she bought it. But we came home. I came home, moved our son back and all that. And I came home, and we went down to Delaware to pick it up. And I rode it home. And I was pretty impressed with it. It is a fun bike, has plenty of power, and handles decent. I mean, it's you know, getting into the curves and twisties, and this is probably one of the reasons why people went for the, you know, we're pushing for the Lowrider ST to get something that can handle the twisties a little bit better. This thing handles them great, but you can't be quite as aggressive as you can on the Lowrider ST. I got to ride a Lowrider ST at the demo days out in Deadwood, South Dakota this year, and, you know, took it out on the twisties and gave it heck. I mean, that bike handles great on that kind of stuff, so I can understand why some guys were like, well, you know, they want the bigger motor and better ground clearance and stuff. I get it, but in all honesty, for me and for my wife, especially when my wife rides, and even for myself, you know, I just respect the fact that you're going to scrape it a little bit quicker on this bike, and it's not that big a deal. It's not a big deal at all. The pegs fold up, the floorboards do, so even if you scrape a little bit, so what? I mean, I've scraped floorboards. I scraped the floorboards on my Street Glide, you know, my Road King. I mean, it's not that big a deal. But it is a beautiful day. It's a beautiful fall day. I love weather like this. And there's some beautiful countryside, and they are starting to... Now, I'll mention this. This isn't part of the review here on the bike, but they are starting to chop the corn, fill the silos and stuff around here in this area. And if you're in the middle of farm country, you know what I'm talking about, especially if there's a lot of corn. So you have to be careful sometimes when you get a breeze. They'll blow some of the husks out on the road, and they can be slippery. So if you're getting out and riding, you know, this time of year, that with leaves coming down some places, you know, this is all stuff that you want to think about. But back to reviewing this bike. Would we purchase this bike again? I mean, that's really the big question. That is a huge yes. I mean, you better believe it. Do not regret the purchase at all. Now, is it perfect? Of course not. No motorcycle I've ever gotten on was perfect. I've never gotten on a bike and said everything's perfect on that. No, it's not. There are always things, some are better than others, but there are always certain things that you'll want to change or, you know, adjustments you'll want to make. And that's the beauty of it. You know, you adjust it to your body, to your riding style, and you do what you want so that you can do what you want with it. For my wife, this has been a great fit because she does enjoy some of the longer rides. 420, I think, is the longest she's done in a day so far up until this point. She does want to do some longer stuff, but that's she was going to ride with me to Tennessee, and then yeah, we had some challenges and weren't able to leave and do what we wanted to there after all. But is it comfortable for the longer rides? Yeah, she's had no issues. The windscreen has helped a lot. We do also have lowers for this bike, the soft lowers that can go on the engine guard. That's another thing that we did add. I forgot to mention that. We did add engine guard and highway pegs. You know, for when you get out there on those longer rides, she rarely uses the highway pegs, but it's just when we get out for longer rides that she'll put them down. But around here, you know, when you're just cutting around local roads, there's no need. I mean, you're fine just putting your feet on the floorboards. But as far as would we purchase it again, most definitely. And if you're in the market for something, you're thinking about, you know what, you'd like to do some longer rides, but most of your riding is just, you know, shorter local stuff, check into one of these. Now, I get they do not make them anymore, and they only made them for a couple of years here in the States. So the prices they're pretty much, they haven't backed off a lot. I mean, they're still right up there. They stayed steady, put it that way. So it's kind of surprising because, you know, the used market has really tanked for some bikes, but for this bike, it's surprising. It hasn't really. It's still pretty steady. But if you're looking for something like this, go test ride one if your local dealer has one. To go over a couple of things that my wife and I love about this 2021 Sport Glide. One of the things it's kind of a mini bagger slash cruiser. It's like two bikes in one. And I'll show you what I mean here. This is how she travels when we do longer trips. The trip to Maine, Ocean City Bike Week, or whatever, we go for a couple of days. This and these two bags, and she's got everything that she wants to take with her. To strip it down and take all this stuff off, it's fairly simple. This just slides off, has these straps here that you strap around the bottom. Set this over here. This comes right off. Now, it does have these clips on. I had loosened them, but these clips push down, secure it properly. These bags, they come off on the inside here. And that's it. I'll give you a close-up. This clip right here. They can be locked, and this slides in the bottom. The other side is the same way. I'll leave that one on for now, but it's the same exact style. The fairing. This comes off. Two clips down here. And that's it. Now you've got a stripped down cruiser, bar hopper, whatever you want to call it. So that's a feature that Jennifer really likes. Most times she keeps everything on it, but there are times she'll take the bags off. She's like, well, I don't need them. So she'll just take them off. Just gives a little bit of a different look and not much of a different feel because those bags are very light, even with some stuff in them, you know, but it's a pretty neat feature. Okay, so I did a little bit of a review while I was riding this bike, this 2021 Sport Glide. My wife puts the bulk of the miles on this bike. So why not have my beautiful wife share what she loves about it and a couple of other things that I actually missed earlier during the review. But go ahead.
So I tend to always be cold. So he did put heated grips on for me, which has been huge when we're riding in colder weather. It's been really helpful. So I love the heated grips. I'm also very aware that as a newer rider, I like to have the extra protection, so I have some strobing brake lights that he put on from
Custom Dynamics. Most of them are Custom Dynamics. We did have a company put them on, a guy put them on for us. So, yeah, they did a great job.
And the question I get all the time is whether this bike is too big for me because I'm 130 pounds and I'm only 5'3", but I am completely flat-footed on this bike, which is a big deal. So, stock seat and everything, I'm completely flat-footed. And I love my Ram phone mount as well. So it's been a great bike for me, super balanced, very easy to ride. I love it. And then he also did add a horn for me because I wanted to be able to be heard. He already talked about the slip exhaust.
The slip-on exhaust, yeah, I did that right away.
It was way too quiet. I knew that was going to be the first thing that happened. But then we got the moto horn.
Yeah,
There's no
it gets
doubt.
your attention.
People definitely hear me. And then with the lights, they're super easy. It's just one button on, and then when I brake, you got the strobe effect, which is amazing as well. So I love it.
Okay, we talk about you putting the bulk of the miles on, and you say you're a new rider, kind of. I mean,
3 years in.
3 years in. However, you're a better rider than some people who've been 10 years in, because you ride and you practice. Not afraid to get out in the parking lot. You know, she gets this thing into a parking lot and she practices. And that's huge, because just because you've been riding for X amount of years doesn't mean you're a good rider. If you're not out there practicing and working on improving your skills.
So the tight turns, knowing when I'm scraping my floorboards like I did today.
I heard you scraping today. Yeah, we were on a big ride today, and I heard you scraping the one time. I was like, yeah, there's nothing wrong with that. You just know that's as far as you can go.
But the lean and the counter steering, it's been really helpful. So working with a one-on-one coach, you know, Wayne is a coach as well, and so being able to work with somebody who can really help me improve my skill set has been huge and make me comfortable to go out on these group charity rides, which we do a ton of. So it's been a really great experience.
And I did mention earlier that you had done 420 was your longest mileage day so far. Why don't you share a little bit about what that was like, because you have the stock seat. We did put the risers on, the handlebar risers on, so that helped bring you up a little bit in the shield. But the stock seat, because I keep seeing people saying, well, I got to spend a bunch of money on a seat.
This seat's been perfect. I mean, you can see I'm completely flat-footed. That's why I was looking at the Softail Slim, because I'm so short and my legs are so short. But this has been great, and doing a long ride, really no issues at all with comfort. It's been super comfortable even with the stock seat, and I love my bags. I'm able to get everything that I need into both the strap-on bag with the sissy bar that he showed you earlier in the video, and then also these bags here just allow me to take everything that I need for, you know, a long weekend or whatever. So super comfortable to ride, have not had any issues. He offered me his gel pad when we rode up to New England from Pennsylvania.
Right.
Didn't need it. I'm completely comfortable, have not had any issues at all. So very, very happy with my purchase, and absolutely shout out to Rommel's Harley Davidson. I found this at Bike Week. You heard that story earlier. Yeah. And not expecting to buy a bike when my husband was not with me, but here we are, and I'm super happy with it.
And it worked out.
Worked out.
All right, over and out. Go ahead, hit that like button and subscribe. We'll keep the videos coming.